So, as I promised in my previous spoiler-free review, that I would provide a more intensive, spoiler-filled my thoughts on Avengers Endgame. And so I'm going to warn you, not only in the title, but here, that this is going to be going deep into the plot and some aspects of the movie. I'm going to be having a lot of spoilers here, so I am presuming you've seen the movie. So be forewarned. So, obviously, at the end of Avengers Infinity War, Thanos has snapped his fingers, and the world is trying to recoup with the events of everybody disappearing. And so the movie immediately starts off with Hawkeye teaching his, out on a picnic with his kids, teaching his daughter how to use the bow and arrow. And it's a very tender moment. And as he's, turns around, we see that the daughter has disappeared. We see dust flying off. And then, he's turns around and, looks for the family, and they've all disappeared as well. Thought that was really cool. That was very impactful. The theater just gasped. Um, and, I kind of saw that in the preview, so we could see how he was affected. And that was a very good emotional scene. And then, we cut to the team. They're trying to figure out what to do. And somehow, actually, we get to, Iron Man. And he's, it's been weeks. So, ultimately, they all get back on the ship and they find out where Thanos is. And he goes, hey, I've destroyed the stones. So, everybody's gone. The whole universe is affected. Stones are gone. And, Thor kills Thanos. And a callback to the last movie, he went for the head. And it's kind of, that's it. Nothing you can do. Then we cut to 5 years later. And I have to admit, 5 years is a very, very long time. I probably would have preferred if it was maybe a year or 2 years. 5 years was a very long time. Anyway, so this is where the movie kind of logistically, falls apart. For me, anyway. Because like I said, 5 years is a long time. Everybody's still reacting. We see Steve Rogers running support group. That's all fine and dandy. But then, we come to a scene where we have the van that, Ant-Man was in at the end of his movie. And it's in a storage locker. And if I remember correctly, the van was in on top of a parking deck. So how it got into a storage garage, I don't know. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense there to me. Kind of a jump. And this is kind of where the movie itself starts to have some leaps here that I'm happy I have issues with. Anyway, so Scott Lang is able to get out of being in the quantum realm due to a rat stepping on a switch. Okay, so like I've seen all in the news and everything, we think the whole movie, the basis of this movie is, with the help of a rat. So if you haven't thought about that now, there you go. So anyway, he determines that maybe they can go back in time to get the stones. And Iron Man, being the guy who he is, first doesn't like the idea, but he thinks about it, and sure enough, he finds a way. And so ultimately, that's what this movie is. It's a time travel movie. And I'm just going to say it out loud. And I've said it before to friends in the past. While I enjoy time travel movies from the past, I'm not a huge fan of that particular genre, simply because a lot of the movies, when it comes to time travel, seem to break their own rules. And so, this movie references a lot of time travels movies. It references, Back to the Future, Terminator, all sorts of, time travel movies. And they were all excellent, references. I thought it was funny, Scott Lang said Die Hard, and he goes, oh, wait, that's not one. But my biggest issue with time travel movies is fundamental, in the sense that if you go back in time and try to change anything, then you kind of destroy the cause of, why you're going back in time in the first place. So, for example, if I went back in time and told Tom Brady to take up baseball instead of football, then would the Patriots still have been to the Super Bowl a million times, prompting me wanting to go back in time to stop Tom Brady anyway? Sort of on that level. Which is one of my fundamental issues with Back to the Future, where, Marty McFly ends up back in time. He's kind of a slacker kid, parents are slackers, brother and sister are slacker. And he goes back in time, changes one little thing. His dad learns to stand up for himself. And so when he comes back to 1985, everything's different. Mom and dad are different. Brother and sister are different. But yet he's still fundamentally the same, as far as we could tell in the movie. Well, with all things being equal, if the parents aren't slackers and the kids aren't slackers, then probably Marty McFly probably would have been different as well. And that's where I think they might have been living in a different house. Marty McFly probably would have been going to a different school. Maybe he never met up with Doc Brown. It's on that level when I think of time travel movies. So, when the Avengers announced that it was going to be a time travel movie, I immediately got scared, because they established their rules at the beginning that if they go back in time to get the Infinity Stones, that they have to get them at a point to where they're able to, bring it back to the present time, undo everything that Thanos has done, but take the stones back at that immediate moment in time so the events can still happen. And so they can't, meet up with themselves or, do a lot of different things. They establish some rules on the get-go, in which they go back in time and proceed to break every single one of those rules. Case in point, Captain America, ends up meeting himself and they end up having a tussle. But that one was written fairly decently, to where, the Captain America of the past thought he was fighting with Loki. And so that was perfectly fine. But in another case, Thor goes, back in time, meets up with his mother, and his mother, says, oh, I grew up with witches, so I know, what you've done. So she immediately knows he's from another time, I guess. That was kind of, brushed off to the side. But the other thing that kind of gets me is, when Nebula and War Machine go back in time, they straight out knock out Star-Lord to take the Infinity Stone. So I am guessing, when they take it back at the end of the movie, somehow Captain America was able to put it back in his little ball and put it back in that little stasis. The whole a lot of those things gets we just assumed everything works, and that's where I'm having my ultimate problem. But the biggest thing that happens that really really bothers me is that while they're back in time, somehow Nebula's network lets the Nebula of the past know what's going on. So Thanos finds out of the past. This is pre Infinity War Thanos finds out what's happening. Finds out he's done what he's done. And so the old Nebula and old Thanos is able to capture the 2019 Thanos, and somehow the years of Earth apply to the years of all the other planets. Just for me to make it easier for the audience. And they capture the new Nebula. They place the old Nebula in place of the new Nebula and send her back to current 2019, in which she's able to bring back Thanos in the current timeline. So we have a pre-Infinity War Thanos in 2019, in which we have a huge battle, an epic battle, awesome battle. I loved every minute of it. I loved, the scene of all the ladies at once, with Captain Marvel. I loved, the Captain America, getting a hold of Mjolnir. I loved, I mean, that battle was just awesome. I loved, when Black Panther, came through the Doctor Strange, circle of light or whatever, and he starts yelling out, his little chant. Whole theater got into it. They started chanting with him, The whole movie was just awesome. I mean, I don't think there's a single person in any of the previous movies that did not make it into this one. Maybe a few people here and there, but damn if they didn't try to get everybody for a 2-second cameo. So don't get me wrong, I'm enjoying the ride here, but fundamentally I'm still having this issue where we have a pre-Infinity War Thanos in 2019, or 5 years later, 2024, however you want to look at it, 2023, if you want to really talk about it. And then they proceed to defeat Thanos by, Iron Man, Tony Stark, getting a hold of the Infinity Stones, snapping his fingers and destroying all of Thanos and his crew. So immediately, I'm trying to figure out how this works. We have a pre-Infinity War Thanos in present time, or however you want to look at the future, who just got destroyed. So, in essence, the pre-Infinity War Thanos never gets a hold of the Infinity Stones to snap his fingers in order to what caused the issue in the first place. So ultimately, we have no reason, the Avengers have no reason to go back in time. We've split from whatever timeline here. Or paradox, if you want to quote Doc Brown, which could cause the collapse of the whole universe, according to him. That's ultimately my issue. And then, before that, Hulk brings everybody back, and they say, well, bring everybody back now. Do not change the past 5 years with everybody disappearing. Just bring everybody back now. And he proceeds to do so. So everybody is back, and it's been 5 years. How the hell does that work? So you have, people who survived and have all some types of survivor's guilt and having issues, and they're 5 years older, only to see their loved ones, their children, and their babies come back at that exact age. And one thing that kind of, got me was, we had Spider-Man disappear, but he's back, and we see a scene where he goes back to high school, and he immediately meets his friend and gives him a hug. I only have to presume that his friend was one of the ones that disappeared as well. Because if his friend didn't disappear, then his friend should be out of high school. It's been 5 years, or he's got a serious learning disability. Should have gotten his GED. Anyway. And I understand there's parts of the movie that, is there for effect. But once again, like I said, it's kind of you're setting a tone here only to kind of walk away from it later. And I'll get to the two big things later. The two big deaths. One of the other things that kind of bothered me was, when Scott Lang was, walking, trying to find out what's going on because he had been gone for 5 years. He's walking through, the streets of San Francisco, and they're desolate, they're dirty, you see abandoned cars, you see trash everywhere. Apparently, even though you lose half your people, you don't get trash service anymore. And then he proceeds to run to some type of memorial park with, all the names of the people that, disappeared. And it's, obviously nice and clean and recently constructed. So somewhere in the past 5 years, someone took the time and energy and money. And I know I'm overthinking it. That's what I do. But someone took the time and energy and the money to make this park, and, gathered all the names of the people that disappeared. And I'm presuming it's only the people in San Francisco, which is still a huge number. And they created this huge memorial park. Now, if it's all the names of all the people in the United States or in the world, that would have been huge. Because, we have over 7 billion people on this planet. So I'm guessing the number is quite smaller. Anyway. So, my thoughts are, okay, somebody was able to put together this huge effort to make this memorial, but yet nobody has taken the time to clean up the trash and clean up, the abandoned cars in the streets of San Francisco, trying to make it, make San Francisco pretty again. Just don't get that. I would think, the local trash company would say, hey, we're still going to pick up trash. It's just going to take us a little bit more time. And in 5 years, you probably would have caught up by then. Anyway, like I said, I know I'm overthinking it, but it's what I do. But then another thing that bothered me is the scene where, Captain America, he's obviously had issues being a man out of time since his first movie. And so, as he's, returning the stones to their point in time, apparently he's able to inject the red ether back into Jane Foster. They don't really talk about that. And he's able, like I said, put all the stones back. How do you put the Soul Stone back? Do you just go to Red Skull and say, "Here, I'm done with it"? They really gloss over that. Anyway, moving on. And he's supposed to come back to the present time, but we kind of get the feeling that's not going to happen. And the next scene we see an old Steve Rogers sitting on the bench. And it's obviously what he's done. He's gone back in time to spend time with Peggy Carter. which once again, I have to say, creates a bit of a paradox. Because, anyway, we see where she goes without people. We had a lot of scenes. Some of them were deleted scenes. But he goes back so he can be with her. I don't know if they had children or what. They don't really into that. But we can only presume they spent the rest of their lives together. I would have had that scene a little bit different. I probably would have had it to where Peggy was at that dance hall that we saw. I think it was in Avengers Age of Ultron, where he never gets to show up, in the original movies. I probably would have had it to where he actually shows up at that part. And they slow dance. So anyway, my dog is growling. So next, I'm going to talk about the two big deaths here. Death number 1, Black Widow. Natasha. I forget her last name. Natasha Romanoff, that's it. Okay, so with her and, was it Ronin now? Hawkeye, whatever. They go to get the Soul Stone. And once again, this is where we have the rules broken once again. And this is very, very annoying. So, Red Skull is there. And he goes, hey, one of you has to die for the other to get the Soul Stone. And between Hawkeye and Natasha, it eventually ends up being Natasha. She dies, and Hawkeye gets the Soul Stone. But we established in Infinity War with Thanos that you can't just kill any random person. You have to kill the thing that matters to you most. Now we know Hawkeye and Natasha are good friends and they care about each other. But I highly doubt Hawkeye likes Natasha more than he likes his family. I don't think that was his greatest loss. You can see the pain in Thanos when he kills Gamora. You can see the pain in his face before he tosses her off the edge. And you can see the pain in his face after. Especially when, after he snaps his fingers. And they say, he sees a little Gamora and says, what did this cost you? And he goes, everything. You can see the pain in his face that he did not want to do Gamora. That his greatest thing was Gamora. You don't get that between Hawkeye and Natasha. You just get that they were good friends and close friends. Okay? So somewhere along the lines, that Soul Stone probably should have been a bit more impactful in order to get the Soul Stone. Not exactly sure how they would have done that, but I'm sure they could have found a way. Second, and this is the bigger death, and I have to admit, after seeing the movie, I got a little misty-eyed. There was something in the air. The death of Tony Stark. After he snaps his fingers. That was a huge emotional moment because you have Spider-Man, crying. You have, Pepper saying her thing. You have, Captain America all teary-eyed. It's a very emotional moment. And then to make it even bigger, during the, memorial session, we have everybody standing there, and that huge, huge touching moment between Happy Hogan and Morgan Stark, talking about cheeseburgers. making a callback to the first movie. That was a touching movie. I mean, I looked all around. The movie theater was dead quiet, and I'm pretty sure the hardest of the hardest dudes were teary eyed. I can't complain about that scene right there. I just have to say that was a very, very impactful scene. So I don't want to say that I did not enjoy the movie. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. Of all the Avengers movies, I will have to admit that Infinity War is my favorite, and then the first Avengers movie would be second. This one comes in the third. But don't get me wrong, this wasn't a bad movie. I enjoyed every minute of it, but fundamentally, it is rather flawed. And it's not a small plot hole; it's a huge gaping plot hole. And I'm just wondering if anybody else caught it. I have a feeling a lot of people did. But after going through a 3 hour emotional roller coaster like that, everybody's going, you know what? That's okay. We don't care. And I'm kind of along the same lines. It was nothing worse than having a poorly executed movie. This movie wasn't poorly executed, it was executed very well. And I've already seen the movie. I'm going to see it again. And I will probably buy it on Blu ray or 4K or whatever when it comes out. And I'll probably watch it again, even though it's as flawed as it is. It takes logical leaps, but that's okay. This movie was good. But at the same time, I know for a fact that there were probably some people out there that had the same issues I did and probably didn't enjoy the movie as much as I did. And I would like to know, were you one of those folks that enjoyed the movie? Or did the plot issues destroy your enjoyment of the movie? Let me know. Post it in the comments below. I would like to hear your thoughts. And if you liked what I had to say about this very long, very rant filled review of Avengers Endgame, hit that like button. And if you'd like to hear more of what I had to say when it comes to movies, TV, Game of Thrones, WWE, hit that subscribe button. Help me get to 200 subscribers. And I'll talk to you guys next time.